Well, maybe that final reminder wasn't set.
No, I just got it. So
You did? Okay.
12:01, so it just actually showed up a minute or so ago.
Okay.
Email isn't as fast as it used to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's Tech Talk with NCLUG. And today's webinar, there was kind of a change of pace, so hopefully all y'all are aware of that. We were going to try to do project-wise, but there was an issue with the presenter. So in lieu of that, we're doing a fireside chat today, where we're just going to cover some tips and tricks and open the floor for any questions or any, if anybody on the call has some tips and tricks that they think of and want to share. But first, just the housekeeping rules. We will be recording the webinar and sharing the link after the event. And then we're still going to offer PDH credits for this event for those who have registered on the website. And then we will be sending out the PDH receipts for some of the past events coming up pretty soon. And we'll still be holding our gift card drawing for a gift card later today, so be sure to stick around until the end of the presentation for that. So with that, I'm now going to introduce our board with NCLUG, our immediate board members, and we're the ones that are going to actually host this event today. Let me go share my screen. So Brian Codwell, I don't know if he's on the line today. I don't think he is, but he's our president of NCLUG this year, and Jason Johnson with Kimberly Horn is our vice president. And then we have Ian Badeau, who's with RS&H. He's going to join us today. And we have Randy Robertson with NCDOT. And then me, I'm Patty Jordan with Mott McDonald. So again, like I said, today's Tech Talk is going to be a little bit different style. This will be an open forum for questions. We might not have all the answers, but someone listening might be able to offer up a solution to your issues. And then if not, we can always investigate it. And then two, we're on the lookouts for some future topics to present with these Tech Talks. So if you have any questions or comments on a topic, just please type your question in the chat box or raise your hand and we'll call on you. With that, I guess, Randy, do I hand it off to you? You gonna help me moderate this?
Yeah, that's as good as any, I guess. Hopefully everybody can hear me. And like Patty said, first thing is we want to throw it open to any comments or questions or, as I like to say, derogatory statements that you might have about what we're doing or what's going on. So if somebody wants to jump in real quick, we're not going to stop you. I mean, I can start calling names. I've got the list right here next to me. I know somebody out there is bound to have something to say. If not, it'll be a quick meeting type thing.
Well, we can start with Ian.
Yeah, we can start with Ian. So Ian he's an expert in Concept Station and Teams meetings and all things web. So we'll turn it over to him real quick and let him talk a little bit, and maybe that will get some questions rolling. So take it away.
Let me stop sharing my.
Sure, and I wouldn't definitely call myself an expert at Concept Station, but I appreciate the sentiments. But let me share my screen. I kind of wanted to open up with just a quick video, just kind of detailing, what Concept Station is about for those that may have never seen it or sit through a session about it, and then kind of talk through some pros and cons, and then kind of, see if anyone else has used this on any other applications on projects and stuff like that. So let me know if this audio doesn't code through, but let's start with that.
Yeah, we can't hear anything if there is audio.
that's not gonna be good if they can't hear it.
When you go to share, when you click on that link, there's a little button at the top that says check include system audio. Do you see that?
Yep, I got it.
And see if that
Here we
works.
go. Okay, let's see. How about now?
Yes, we can hear that now.
Jumpstart your projects with fast and easy conceptual design using OpenRoad's Concept Station. As we look at the highlights in OpenRoad's Concept Station, we'll begin by starting a project in which we select, query, and we download our project data. Using geocoordination services, we can select terrain, imagery, and other accessible data, import that directly into our project site. Here we see the overall project area. Notice there's high-res imagery included, as we see at the intersection. We can zoom back out. We quickly move and rotate our project area. The imagery's been draped onto the 3D terrain to give us a full representation and full context of elevations and grades across our site. As we begin, we lay out a roadway. We can lay out roadways very quickly and very easily based off of design criteria such as design speed and roadway classification. Notice as I move the roadway, again, interactively and dynamically across the site, cuts and fills are calculated and displayed and modeled automatically. Notice as I move the cursor and the roadway around on the terrain, the cut and fills are generated directly. Making modifications to our roadway layouts is very simple. Simply select the roadway, relocate points in the horizontal as well as in the vertical. We'll just quickly edit the vertical, and that results in a three-dimensional conceptual model based off of your design criteria, such as design speed, typical section, and so forth. The data is three-dimensional to give you full representation, so as you make changes, the model and associated data are dynamically updated. Here we'll modify the profile over the crest of the curve. Notice how the cut and fill slopes change. In addition to roadways, we can lay out and model bridges within our conceptual model. Again, to fully conceptualize roadway projects, here we're going to lay out a bridge over the interstate within our project area based off of a superstructure type and a bridge typical section, which we can select. The abutments, piers, and beams are all customizable to meet your standards. We can now see that bridge in 3 dimensions, including wing walls and abutments. Now, the bridges that we create are fully integrated into the modeling. You can dynamically refine the concept as needed. Here we're going to modify the profile across the bridge deck. Notice what happens to the bridge model as we make that change to the alignment. The model updates dynamically and interactively, giving you the opportunity again to adjust and refine your conceptual design to meet the needs of your project. In addition to bridges, there are tools to include intersections, including roundabouts. Here we'll lay out a roundabout between 2 intersecting roadways. Now the roundabout is constructed in 3 dimensions based off the horizontal location and the vertical profile of the intersecting roadways. Notice that the geometric definition of that roundabout is included, which makes adjustment of that roundabout and other geometric entities very quick. Here we'll just directly change the inscribed radius and notice how the model updates. In addition to roundabouts, we can include intersections. Here we'll place a simple T intersection at 2 intersecting roadways. We select the roadways, then click through the prompts and create the 3-dimensional T intersection with striping included. We can estimate costs on demand as needed in Concept Station to give you a full picture into costs for evaluation. In addition, we can visualize and animate your conceptual model. Concept Station gives you tools to directly visualize and animate your conceptual model. Here we're flying down our roadway, our conceptual model of our roadway and overpasses to give, again, full context of the design. You can visualize real-world traffic based off of real-world traffic volumes and analysis. Here we're looking at the traffic patterns at an intersection based off of Vism analysis software scripting. So with Open Roads Concept Station, very simply, get there faster on each and every one of your projects.
So that's kind of just a very simple overview there about Concept Station. Kind of some notes before we kind of hopefully have some group discussion about this. Is kind of the pros for Concept Station is kind of really a really fast way of sketching something in order to show either the public or to show a client, or kind of get to a point where you can talk about. A lot of times we get into conversations and talk about typicals, we get into the weeds of things and don't really are able to put it on kind of aerial or put it on some type of design, so where we're able to actually discuss. And a lot of times those conversations go a lot quicker if you're able to see something versus just talking about offsets and buffers through the design process. Another pro would be that we're able to actually look at the aerial and 3D information without having to pull it ourselves. So with Bentley providing that data, now obviously it's based on whatever data they have. So if you needed to bring in some LiDAR, some newer 3D TIM information or aerial, you can definitely input that and bring that into Concept Station. So that's able to really get off the ground before having to get all that extra data that we get with feasibility and preliminary designs. Construction cost estimation. This is kind of a pro and con that we can definitely discuss in a little bit, but it's quickly kind of get some estimated on costs, some cut and fill, some rough structural lengths and stuff like that, and heights. Obviously, kind of leading into the cons of that is that NCDOT or whatever municipality or client that we have, that has to kind of marry up with their pay items and kind of the way that they estimate projects. So if Bentley's not using the exact pay item or stuff like that, there's some added work there to kind of take what Bentley produces and create kind of a cost estimate or a very rough estimate of cost. But you're able to do that a lot quicker than say Excel sheets and stuff like that, and shapes that we normally would produce for estimating purposes. Kind of wanted to open up from there, kind of get anybody's maybe application of this product. Has anyone had any experience with applying this into a project for either an NCDOT, for a municipality or anything like that? Does anyone have any experience or could shed light on a way that they utilize this for a client?
Ian, this is Patty. I was just going to say that I do know that NCDOT is planning on using Concept Station for functional designs. I believe that's been approved. And they do have a course, so we're hoping that sometime next year, NCLUG will be able to teach the kind of workshop on that. But what used to be a big issue with, so this is just for kind of concepts, more functional planning. There was issues when it first came out with it not translating over into the design when you get to the design phase. But I thought I heard that they have fixed that some of the data that you have can go into your final design.
So I haven't done it myself on that end, but I do know that they have in prior kind of workshops of this, is you're able to output an alignment file or some type of geometric into Geopack. Now I'm not sure how that would work with Open Roads. I'm assuming it would be a little more seamless since they're going with Open Roads. I'm not sure on that end. I don't know if anyone on the call has experience with that, but I'm not. I would definitely think that you can, if worse comes to shove, you can definitely just pull the geometric information and just enter that into COGO or into Open Roads. Be a little less seamless, but there is
And I
definitely.
assume just like you would with normal functional plans, you're really going to take that and re-input it into a final design so you can verify and check it and go back through your parameters for design. It'd be the same type of thing.
Yeah, it definitely allows you to do make all those edits while you're working on the concept. But yes, like you said, you're going to have to definitely refine it down to an actual final design, geometric inputs to make that happen for sealing and final design. But it's definitely geared towards conceptual and for visual basis. Another deliverable is for public meetings. So like if you have really early concept public meetings with the public, kind of walk through different concepts, you might not want to put the full effort into going through creating a feasibility design and then modeling it and then being able to produce that for a public meeting, where in this you would, yes, maybe still do the feasibility design or preliminary plans on a regular product with Bentley, but if you wanted to have a really quick visualization for the public, you could throw that into Concept Station and be able to show that either through a video or something like that. And when it comes to visualizations for public meetings, there's a lot of positive for people can, you might see it on a sheet of paper on the wall or on a website, but being able to actually see the road, see the interchange or whatever you're designing at the time, it changes the conversations with the public, that they're able to really understand what's happening, what the impacts are, and kind of give you input in those meetings.
Okay, Ian, here's a couple questions that have been generated already.
Sure.
I'll start at the top. Can it generate cross sections?
I know there is a cross-section view. I don't have actually concept on this version of my computer, so I can't pull it up to show you. But there's a profile view, and I believe there's a cross-section view. I don't know if it can actually generate cross-sections. So I think it's more of a visual and not so much trying to put things on PDF sheets of paper or plan sheets or anything like that.
Okay, here's another one, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't do this, but does it consider the fastest path for a roundabout?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I haven't had that experience with it, so I don't think so. I think this, yeah, like I said, more of a conceptual, less design for that. But definitely, if you did that in another software or a different kind of modeling program and wanted to take the design that you came up with and put it into a visual state for somebody, it would definitely be effective there.
Further question. This one I'm not sure about. I don't think it does it, but I vaguely remember seeing something. Is there a function in this that can be used for water and sewer design? So any of the subsurface utility type stuff.
I've seen the flood one where they actually flood the model like that, right?
I think you might be thinking about a different. There's Bentley has come out with a new modeling that actually shows the flood situation or a different a storm event through a 3D plane or a 3D surface. I think that's more on the SUDA or other open road products, not with Concept Station. I'm not aware of any drainage. You can definitely put traffic control cones and stuff like that to visualize that, structural components, but I'm not aware of any drainage functionality for Concept Station.
And then Troy Wilson, I think he works for us, if I remember correctly. He said he's used it to show potential project impacts to planners and local officials. Troy, if you're out there, you want to expand on that a little bit? We can unmute you some way.
Can you hear me okay, Randy?
Yeah, I can.
Go for it.
A lot of times they'll say, hey, we want to put a roundabout at this intersection. So what will a full-size roundabout look like? What potential impacts to the properties? Or say, let's do a mini roundabout here neighborhood roundabout and see that. That way, before they get too gung-ho about moving forward with the project, they can kind of get a feel what kind of impacts it could have to local properties or whatever. It just kind of gives them a quick way to decide whether they want to take on that fight or not.
And what's been the actual reaction to that? Do they like it or not? Or
yeah, it's nice for them to see, because it's hard to for them to see what different sizes and how it impacts. And we have a rock wall here, but we don't want to touch that rock wall. So if we move this, toward this property, what's it going to look like? Or if we put sidewalks on both sides or a multi-use path, how big of an impact is it going to be in this neighborhood? I mean, those are pretty quick ways to kind of give them a look, to kind of see what those impacts could potentially be. Because a lot of these planners and stuff, and a lot of these officials aren't engineers or anything like that. So sometimes it's hard for them to see that until they actually see a set of plans. So it's great just to give them kind of a concept. Everybody's always concerned about potential impacts to properties and businesses.
And I'll just add too that Bentley is now owns like Lumen RT, and I think that's integrated into the concept station too. So you can like actually go back in and add more 3D trees and things like that to visualize, make the visualization better.
Yeah, and that's really based on how much time you want to put into it. I mean, you definitely can change the time of day, add trees like I was saying, add the cars from traffic signalization. So there's definitely, how much you want to put into it. If you're looking at a full-blown preliminary plans, public meeting, you could really get into the videos and actually generate videos from it instead of having to go through, a third-party illustration, company that does that. You can do a little bit, dumbed down version to where you can get your point across, but not have to shed out the big bucks for, a visualization company. Does anybody else would like to share?
Ian, does this software for, like you say, Concept Station is not like built into En-ROADS, but it's its own package? Yeah. Do you have to pay for that separate, or does it come with your subscription? Do you know?
No, that is a con. So it is a cost that you have to justify. So that is something that is part of the equation of what either yourself or the client is willing to do to. But the payoff for the public being able to understand and truly a decision maker or shareholder of the project being able to actually see it, there's a lot of value there to make that happen. I know the public coordination with is very interested in ways of being able to share that through not just there's definitely a need for public hearing maps and being able to actually show those on a PDF and plans, but being able to walk someone to their front door if they're on their house is on the aerial and show kind of what that looks like from that perspective really changes the conversation and allows for a lot of productive talking with the public in that point.
I mean, here's another question, and since you brought up the hearing maps and stuff, I mean, there's always, I know in the department that's always a touchy subject, but has anybody attempted, and I don't know if you can even do this, but taking it the other way, rather than using Concept Station as, say, a preliminary tool, use it more for we've done this much design, can we take it back into project or Concept Station and then go out and show it? In other words, here's the project as designed. Now let's go to a public hearing and say, okay, this is what we plan on building. And use Concept Station to do it, sort of backwards, so to speak, to use it to simplify the rendering, the additions and subtractions of things. Or do you even think that would be possible?
Yeah, so this is Wasim. I had a couple of projects with VDOT, Virginia projects with this I-95 widening. And some of these designs, and at that time we didn't have the software in the company, so we just ran with the typical, MicroStation design files and stuff. And in the middle of the design, they got the software installed in the system, so we wanted to try it out. And yes, it's easier. I mean, it's all based off of alignments or lines. And so if you have your alignments and your, for example, your EOT lines, edge of payments or paved shoulder lines drawn in, then it's easier to just kind of import the file in and pick that line as your defining line and put the templates based off those lines. Yeah, so yeah, it's doable, and yeah, you could easily, that section going back and forth is easy on that particular point. Like if you wanted to go back from design to a concept station, it's a lot easier. But one thing we did notice when we were doing the design was there was a rest area project right under between this widening section, and we wanted to do the rest area on concept station, but because there's just limited templates available for these kind of non-standard design, that was an issue. Then we ended up doing just your typical standard templates, corridor modeling design on just the rest area part, and use the other sections for concept stations.
Seem, I was just going to ask you, when you look at the video and stuff, it looks like it's really just a click and plug kind of system. Like you put down an alignment and you say, this is the template I want, and you just drop it. Is it really that simple and easy to use? Or is there a lot more setup involved in starting a project in Concept Station?
I think it's pretty straightforward, since it's all point and click format. So, but as long as you have some sort of reference point, for example, a line, a center line or edge of payment line defined, then it gets easier. But unless you, if you don't have anything set, plus also the other thing is there's no custom templates. So it's all just whatever design you do, as long as it's standard design, concept station works fine. But anything outside of that, for example, like a rest area, like I mentioned, then there's no customizations. Then it's actually more work customizing than it is doing the actual. Then you might as well just do the corridor model. I don't know if anybody else had any experience doing anything like that with custom and different perspective.
I think somebody's going to say something.
Yeah, this is Mike Donahue. I'm out of Florida, but I've used this for some PD&E work, and for that, it's pretty good. But I would agree with his assessment entirely that if you get into customizing intersections or customizing a template or something like that, you're better off corridor modeling on top of LiDAR. But then, of course, you get it's a little cumbersome because you can't really drape the aerial imagery in MicroStation quite as easily and effectively as you can in Concept Station. So it's got its benefits, but it's got its limitations as well.
Yeah, here's a couple other questions that sort of popped up on the thing. One, how much detail can you define at the intersections? Is it easy to define dual lefts or exclusive rights, or other types of conditions, or is it more just generic intersection type look? Anybody want any comment on that?
Randy, I haven't really got into the intersection customization, so turning lanes and stuff like that. I haven't got into that, so I can't really comment on whether or not that's a capability or not. I think they do offer like tapers from lanes and laneage and stuff like that, so I don't know if they're able to kind of apply that at the intersection.
Well, and it is just a preliminary design tool. It's not made to be all-inclusive, I'm pretty sure.
Also, one of the neat things we encountered, with this concept station was you can export this into a KMZ as a 3D KMZ file pretty easily. And so we had this whole, for example, the rest area, or the widening section. We just exported out as a KMZ file and put it right on top of Google Earth. So then you could see the existing versus the proposed at the same time. That was a good benefit, having a 3D quick KMZ, 3D KMZ file.
Interesting. Let's see what
And I've
else.
seen them model interchanges and stuff pretty rapidly too, ramps and things of that nature.
And then here's one other question. How is Concept Station, this is a good question, at displaying information from Concept Station and sending it out to PDFs or plots or prints? Or is it basically really an interactive display type thing without the quote unquote documentation to go along with the stuff, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any like cheating abilities to it. Somebody definitely can speak up if you've been able to do that. But I don't think it's set up. I think it's more, generating that concept, generating, what could happen really quick, and kind of getting buy-in, and getting a very rough estimate of cost.
Yeah, because I think with the PDFs, what happens is you end up with the plot drivers issues. You can, you see it on the screen and you can fence it and all, but once you hit plot, with the plot drivers, sometimes it just gives you a little wire mesh instead of a nice visualization. It shows up as a wire mesh, and so you start playing with these different options. But I never had a good PDF made off of that. I always ended up just doing a KMZ for the clients. But the VR side is great. You could do a walkthrough. I don't know if somebody mentioned it or not, but yeah, we had, with public hearings at Virginia, we had people use these goggles, wear these goggles and drive through a roundabout as if they're in the car, and just see the feeling, how they're gonna see it as the whole roundabout, how it's gonna feel and all. But that was actually a mix. It wasn't just standalone Concept Station. It was a mix of Concept Station plus what is it? The other I guess Luminarty. Yeah, so it was a mix. After that, you had to do a couple of iterations to get to that VR.
Les, in Virginia, did you have any issues with? I know over the years there's been a lot of, I won't say a lot of, but there have been concerns that when you do interactive things like this, if you show a tree in the wrong place or make somebody's property look a little nicer maybe than it is going to be in reality, since you can add nice grass or whatever, trees. Do they have any concerns or any issues with people coming back later and saying, this is what you showed me at my
Yeah, we
hearing,
haven't.
and
Yeah,
then I don't have my tree, or it's only a foot tall rather than being 6 feet tall, giving me shade.
Yeah, so far we haven't had any issues, but I'm sure these would pop up. Yeah, I think so far the experience was people looking at this new technology once they saw, like, once they drove through the intersection or a roundabout, and you could pan left and right sitting in the car and see the whole area roughly how it's gonna look. I think people were more happier seeing that rather than actually, because I think maybe in the background they kind of accepted that this is more of an animation rather than the real, but I could see somebody getting pissed off for having
That's expensive tree.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions from the gallery?
Also, I'm not sure the system requirements, for this concept station. Like we had issues with our regular laptops. Those laptops worked fine with coder model, 3D design and stuff. But when it came for concept station, it could be just our, maybe it's just a company specific problem. But we had to have different laptops, a little more like a gaming setup or specs for it to kind of have a smooth drive or a smooth, a clean look to it. I don't know if anybody else had any issues with the specs for your minimum specs for your laptops and stuff.
I would think just, offhand that you'd want a decent graphic card of some type to display the graphics. And unfortunately, I think too many organizations worry about what the minimum is rather than what they actually need to do the job. Because to do the job is a little more expensive in general. Okay, let's see. Anything else? Anybody else have any comments? Doesn't look like there's any. Oh, there's somebody. Let's see. There's ignore my tasks. Let's see. Let's see. You can define. Here's another one from Troy. Here's from Troy. You could have just talked this one. It does not have the NCDOT typical sections, and they're easy to build. Once you build them, you'll have them in your library. So I assume you're saying that you can easily create basic sections for use in Concept Station without too much trouble.
Yeah, you can build any typical you can think of. They're quick and easy to build.
A bit easier than say an ORD or Geopack.
In my opinion, yes.
And then let's see, Douglas Casino, if I'm saying that right, says we had to update our NVIDIA cards and all our devices to do this.
So definitely just pay attention to, your requirements, what you need for a computer to go through that. But I would assume if you're doing anything going towards open roads that you're definitely going to have that anyway.
And then Oak chimed in here with a comment, said that we ended up having to build our own NCDO templates for Concept Station. So he's the man to talk to if you need those.
Yeah, are those available?
Well, he built them. Now, I don't know if they're
them?
available. It's another story, but I have to ask Oak. And I know he's out there, so.
So Patty, what you mentioned earlier about the feasibility side, looking into clearing this for use, is that towards the express design side?
I just thought it was through like the planning section and doing functional design.
Okay.
I'm not sure about express design.
Okay. So we can definitely look into if that's something that NCLUG is interested in, a little bit more training on this, in light of doing that for either express design or feasibility or different types of studies, helping out at the beginning at least, if not producing an express design kind of format.
This is Derek. We did get into a little bit of training earlier last year before we got kind of shut down. It was about middle of the year where we started experimenting with it some. It's sort of like CAD for planners. And we're hoping that we can get where it can give us some quick estimates on it, but we ain't got there yet. And the part about exporting it back into ORD is the part that I haven't figured out how we do that part, because you don't get into the details with Concept Station. It's more of a high level it's a good way of showing your partners this is what it might look like.
Sure.
Not necessarily doing a design that's refined enough to get good quantities and good estimates.
So you
Yeah.
wouldn't, Derek, you wouldn't base any like environmental wetland impacts and things like that off the concept station?
Well, what we
Or-
have found out that you can use it to kind of see what the slope stakes might look like. And if you're having to do something on the quick part, you can transfer those lines kind of by hand over onto it to show what the slope stakes might be. If you haven't had a chance to work up a formal ORD model, because it kind of gives you a good visual of what the slope stakes might look like if you've got it plugged in decent. But you really can't fine tune it. You're kind of stuck with how the model wants to do it. So I would not do it as a refinement, as something that's that definitive. It's, as I said, more of a visualization tool.
Yeah, I can see it, Derek, in the Express Design format of the first round. So if you're still trying to kind of iron out some of the alternates or details of an Express Design, doing it at the first round, and then that second round you would actually do it in whatever version of MicroStation you were working in, because the other half of the Express Design was like the right-of-way impacts and different environmental stuff, getting that set up. So not having the ability to kind of generate those right-of-way shapes and impacts for that final Express Design deliverable, you wouldn't be able to finish it all the way through with Concept Station, but maybe that first round of weeding out through the maybe concepts.
Yes. And we also were working with our division CDE partners to try to get them some training to use it to kind of visualize the concepts with the MPOs and RPOs, to kind of get them to buy in or put aside bad ideas or kind of move forward with ones that seem promising. Because until you see a picture, a lot of times it's all nobody really understands. And we were hoping to get into that. I think that some think it can get into generating estimates, but I do not think that it's ready for that part. And you're right about the right-of-way part. We need to have the polygons in order to do our right-of-way estimates the way we're working towards trying to get something that's defensible.
Right. So definitely a tool, but maybe not fully utilized in our workflow process.
It's not a panacea. It basically it has its place, and I agree. The first part about cutting through the minutia to get to the concept or concepts that need to be carried forward is a good tool. I just don't think that it's the right one for the final part. I think down in Florida, what I understand, because we were working with Arcadis, I think it was, with trying to figure out what we could do with it. They had it where some people would run the concept station in the initial concept birthing part, and then export that model over to people who were more refined with ORD, and they would kind of like cut through the chaff to get to the parts of it that are worth something, and then develop an ORD model using it as a starting place. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's what Arcadis out of Jacksonville is doing. Gene Howard leads their group up there, and they're doing a lot of design build work. So their initial 30% level plans were real high level kind of concept plans for interstate work, and I think they ran this in order to get a general idea of earthwork balancing and things like that. And so that was pretty helpful in that regard. As long as they were able to manipulate pavement design, they were able to get pretty good numbers early in the process when they were looking at their grades.
Yes, that's kind of where I was getting to, is that you kind of use it as a start, but not for the final product. And I think that our in-house staff are running Concept Station to generate earthwork quantities as well, with feasibility studies right now on some of the smaller ones to kind of experiment with it, but not using it as the final product. It's still kind of the start, because it really doesn't do well with roundabouts, because you can't tune it very well. So, and if you're not careful, it will set the grade based upon not the one you necessarily meant it to be on. If you make a change, it changes the whole model, and you got to make sure you didn't do something you didn't intend to happen.
Sure.
Like when you drop in the intersection on top, it might drop it to the grade of the lower road instead of the upper one, and all of a sudden you have to just make sure that it didn't do what you didn't want it to. So don't run with it like, oh, it did it automatically and we're all good. You got to check a little bit. But I still think it's a very good tool to visualize, and I think you need to think of it more like sort of a CAD, a first cut tool, or a CAD for planners. And we're still going to be doing a lot of our work in ORD. We just got to get there. We ain't got there yet.
You're saying it's a tad easier to learn than ORD, huh?
I think it's because it's sort of like more plug and play. It kind of does its thing, and you don't have to go through all the effort that you have to with the details. But you can't get the details out of it because there's an export problem where you can export the stuff to do something with it. It's like, I don't know if you can get it out of here onto a PDF, as y'all were talking about a minute ago. I haven't seen anybody do it yet. And if you can't export it that way, then it's really only useful for when you're running the tool. And having it where somebody else can run the same tool by opening up the same model that you hand off to them. But I like it as far as that goes, as far as seeing what somebody's doing. And so it has its place. It's just, I don't think that, as I said, it's not the be all end all. I think it's going to have a part in our process, but not necessarily. It's not the driver. It may be as a good filter to kind of get down to what we need to be running with. And if it takes you 5 minutes to generate a model or a half hour to generate a model that looks like that, and they get to say, yes, I like that, let's move forward with it, or no, let's don't do that, then that was 5 minutes or 30 minutes worth of doing. Rather than days with trying to get it on ORD.
Thanks, Derek.
Of course, that's just me talking. I don't drive the machine. I just look at it. I couldn't make that thing do anything myself anymore. I'm too far away from it.
Oh, the bane of our profession.
Yes, for 20 years telling people what to do.
So I think instead of jumping into any other topics, does anybody have any other thoughts? The other thing I think we wanted to kind of touch on before we finished out the meeting today was if there was any other topics. Feel free to type in the chat or talk out loud and discuss. But we're looking for 2021's topics, working through our list of things to request from Bentley or organize with a consultant or the state to put on. But is there any topics that are top of your mind or something you really want to look into for next year?
And Ian, I was just going to also mention that if most people have Bentley Learn subscription, there are some courses on this Concept Station there that you could go and practice and download some data sets and things like that to kind of test it out and see how it works. But you would, I guess, have to have Concept Station software. I mean, the version on your machine.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things I would like Bentley kind of explore, or maybe touch a topic would be to kind of, like Derek mentioned, some sort of export tool for these softwares, even ORD or Concept Station, somehow to kind of export it either in PowerPoint or a Google Earth or something where you could take that simple format and show it to a client or a DOT or something, rather than have the whole software load and run it as live.
So some kind of end user
kind
of way of presenting the information without having to have that software.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm sure they probably have something. I mean, it's got to have something in there for exporting all this into a different format easier.
Sure.
Maybe some, like PDF, for example, if they had something for just like a what you see, what you get sort of PDF, format.
Okay, well, anybody else have any comments or topics that we won't cover them today, but would like to see covered in the upcoming months and years ahead?
I assume we've been getting a lot of views. I mean, a lot of attendees to these events over the last 6 months. I guess we've been almost doing this since July. So we're hoping to continue these through all of 2021. But, we're just looking for content and also interested in if your firm wants to present something, we're interested in hosting those kind of presentations too. And not just CAD related. I mean, it could be drone technology, just any kind of technology, things like that that you might be interested into, policies, anything of that nature. We're open.
Also on that same note, I just wanted to ask the question of how are the formats that we have been presenting, whether or not you've been enjoying this format, or is there any suggestions on a different format of a longer session or a different day or some other way of presenting information to the user group, or having different kinds of sessions? Is there any suggestions or thoughts on maybe changing up or I guess affirmation of is this way of presenting the best way?
Well, with dead silence hitting the room, it sounds like we do a pretty good job, I guess.
Yeah, I think I like the format. It's kind of nice. It's not too long, and it's more interactive. You can see it, and timing's fine too for me personally.
Here's one so far so good. So there's can't do much better than that.
Yeah, I imagine when we get into the full-fledged integration of ORD, that we'll probably have to have some different formats of training, and we'll definitely be talking through that as a board of how that works and kind of the best ways to moving forward to help NCDOT with the ORD implementation. We're definitely open to different formats.
Yeah, my kids are doing Google Classrooms.
Here's one other quick question for everybody, just out of curiosity. If we go back to having a in-person conference, let's say in July, would most people be inclined to attend, or do you think that's going to be too early, or is your firm getting hooked on all these free videos and don't want anybody leaving the office if they ever get back to it? And another long silence.
Hey, Randy.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer that one, but I do miss, last year and the previous year we had the NCDOT Minute Clinic where you can bring in your laptops and workstation, and we configure it to work with our workspace in our system. That's something that has to be done, face to face. And with the pandemic the way it is now, we can't do that. But that is something we miss doing, because I've been getting service calls a lot that ask, what I'm doing wrong with my, laptop, my configuration, my workspace. I can't get it done. It's something we can easily do in 5 minutes with this minute clinic that we've done in the past, but we could do it more because it's not that face-to-face time available to us anymore with this condition. So that's just a comment, not answer or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I mean it's an open question, you know. I mean, even for big organizations like ASHTO and people like that, as you know, how are you going to, or are you going to be able to go back to in-person type events, and more importantly, are you going to be allowed to go to in-person type events? You know, is your firm or organization willing to, you know, foot the bill again now that they haven't done it for a year or so? It's just something, you know, to think about, and it's something that we're gonna have to deal with, you know, this spring if we're going to decide on having a, you know, in-person, our usual 2 or 3 day conference in this summer, or even, you know, next December for our, you know, generally our winter conference. That one will probably be okay, but
really depends on when the government and the governors allow people to meet in person and how many in the group.
yeah, there are a lot of limits like that, or if you can even go to it. If you're, I know some other national conferences that slightly involved in, there's a question of, you know, would you, you know, are you even allowed to travel if you're already into your budget year, or if you didn't do this, or, you know, if this state's off limits or this city's off limits, you know, how do you handle that kind of stuff? And it wreaks havoc planning, I'll tell you.
I mean, there's the, you know, allowed side. Are you allowed to do certain things? But there's also the need and the want. And I could speak for the need and want side. But I think there is a need for hands-on workshops and so forth. And you get so much more out of these face-to-face class that you can ask the instructor what stuff doesn't make sense. Now, if you don't do a webinar or videos or something, you can get so much, but there's no substitute for being a face-to-face, asking, you know, instruction. Some of the stuff that I train and go over are not in the manual, are not in the videos. There's, you know, certain insights that I can only show you in class. You know, what to look out for, what's some of the tips and tricks and stuff. And these important lessons are not, you know, a recorded session or in a manual somewhere. It's just, you get it when you come to class. It's just, you know, somebody asks a important question, well, it's not included in the manual or in the, well, just answer it there. And then, yeah, that's a very good subject that we just missed out not getting into the face-to-face environment in workshops.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there, Oak, that we miss all the interaction is very important and works both ways. Even if you're teaching the class, you tend to learn as much from the group as you do explain to them. But with that said, it's a little after 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call this a meeting. I see Patty says congratulations to Michael Woodruff, who won today's NCLUG gift card. She will be in contact with you. If she can't get it, I get it, I guess, maybe. We'll see what happens there. But with that said, I guess thank you everybody for attending today. Hope you got something out of it, or if nothing else, I hope you enjoyed it. It made your
Randy,
lunch hour go quicker. Yeah.
I was just going to remind everybody that next week there won't be a tech talk just because of the Thanksgiving holidays. We'll pick back up on December 3rd. And then we're going to have a special one like December 16th with Lisa Coleman. So on just about changing or navigating change. So I think it's it'll be a great presentation from her. So I highly encourage y'all to go out there and sign up for that too. I think the registration's already open.
Yeah, I highly recommend you attending Lisa's classes. They're very, very thought-provoking. So with that said, thank you for attending, and hopefully we'll see you online at our next one. Have a good Thanksgiving, and be safe out there.